professionally. And it's just a great day to celebrate it. And Lydia Blackmore is a perfect example, as Richie introduced her earlier. She came to Winterthur having interned at museums large and small, from the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History to small historic sites. But most of what you need to know about Lydia is encapsulated in Rebecca's anecdote about goals. Lydia is very clear about her goals and works hard to accomplish all of them in a timely way. And this introduction is far from the only item on her bucket list that she can check off. She will graduate not only with an MA degree from the University of Delaware, but also a museum studies certificate. And on her own time this past year, she conducted Winterviews, speaking to senior staff in every division of this institution, accomplishing one more goal that she set when she arrived here, which was to learn about all aspects of museum work. You'll really enjoy her discussion of objects of presidential campaigns.
Hi. Welcome, and thank you for coming to hear where our research has taken us over the past 2 years. During that time, I have immersed myself in the material culture of the presidential elections of the second quarter of the 19th century. I have read the partisan newspapers, interacted with campaign objects, and become enamored with the candidates of the age of Jackson. You might notice my earrings have Andrew Jackson on them. Today, I will present some of the conclusions I drew from the abundance of evidence of objects created to show support for Andrew Jackson, William Henry Harrison, Henry Clay, and Zachary Taylor during their presidential campaigns from 1828 to 1848. During my research, I ventured to several museums and institutions to touch as many campaign objects as possible. The result of my travels is a catalog of nearly 100 objects included at the end of my thesis. I supplemented these objects with descriptions of campaign pieces found in advertisements from period newspapers and from personal stories taken from historic diaries. I also studied the historiography of political history to see how other political historians have approached the material culture of populist politics. By the end of my search, I found enough objects to fill a hypothetical campaign world. From this world of campaign material culture, I came to many conclusions about the vital role of material culture in populist politics. First, there is an extraordinary amount of primary evidence of campaign objects from this era. Second, these objects made politics more accessible, not only for the newly enfranchised white men of the 19th century, but also for women, children, African Americans, and recent immigrants. Third, these objects were important markers of identity in a world divided by partisanship. And finally, campaign material culture serves as physical evidence of populist politics, showing how politics filled the public and domestic world. Many political historians have focused on the words and actions of the politicians instead of the populace, and have ignored or belittled the material evidence of populist political movement. I hope I have bridged the gap between traditional political history and material culture studies to understand both the political and the material culture of the age of Jackson. In the era of populist politics, every part of the day might have included a campaign object. In 1828, it was possible for a man to pin a hickory twig to his lapel as he helped raise a hickory pole in town square. Then he could take a swig from a flask depicting General Jackson and a pinch of tobacco from a Jacksonian tobacco box. Then he could return home to eat dinner off of a plate depicting Major General Andrew Jackson and pour beer or water from a pitcher celebrating the hero of New Orleans, while his wife pulled pins from her pin box proclaiming victory to Jackson. Their German neighbors might have eaten from a Liberty for J.A. Jackson's graffito plate and perused a German language coffin broadside. During William Henry Harrison's hard cider and log cabin campaign in 1840, a man might wake up in the morning, get out from under his Harrison uniform bedspread, bathe with Harrison soap, and shave with log cabin emollient. He might ride through town in his Harrison carriage, wearing a log cabin hat and holding a hard cider cane on his way to keep the ball rolling in a parade or raise a log cabin in the center of town. His wife might stand on a balcony to wave a Tippecanoe handkerchief at the passing parade, or write a letter with a Tippecanoe pen on log cabin letter paper and send it with a log cabin letter stamp. She could serve her friends coffee from a log cabin coffee pot, poured into log cabin patterned teacups and stirred with log cabin teaspoons. Her children might stand at the fence to see the taxidermied raccoon and miniature log cabin held aloft as parade floats, or hold their own tea party with a Columbian Star child's tea set. At least one freed African American observed every celebration, placed bets on the election, and expressed his opinion by purchasing an image of his favorite candidate. That's a quote from William Johnson, a freed slave in Natchez, Mississippi. Johnson went against the white majority in Natchez and showed his support for Democrat Martin Van Buren by purchasing a portrait of the incumbent candidate to hang in his home or barber shop. 4 years later, a clay man could place his empty cup on a Henry Clay pressed glass cup plate, or pull a cigar from his clay cigar case to enjoy a smoke as he pondered the American system and the annexation of Texas. His wife or daughter might have put down her needlework portrait of the great compromiser to grab her clay and Frelinghuysen flats and handkerchiefs and rush off to special benches reserved for the ladies at a local rally. During Rough and Ready Zachary Taylor's campaign in 1848, an Italian rough and ready man might have placed his Rio Grande cigar case and Taylor mirror in his pocket as he went out to march in the Grand Parade. A Whig woman might have selected a rough and ready bonnet or a lithographed handkerchief depicting Mexican-American war battles from a rough and ready bandbox before heading out to the celebration. Her child could peek out at the festivities by raising the rainbowed rough and ready curtain paper or parting the Resaca de la Palma curtains as he stayed warm at home by the Zachary Taylor parlor stove. The campaign objects in this study show the broad audience for populist politics in the second quarter of the 19th century. They highlight the contrast from the emphasis on the landed elite during the early republic to the campaign for the support of the general masses in the age of Jackson. Politicians and their partisan organizations did not only seek the support of the voting public, they also reached out to women, children, and minority groups. They invited women to political events, encouraged children to identify partisan differences, Democrats eat rats and Whigs eat pigs, and also printed political propaganda in multiple languages. These disenfranchised groups were active consumers of the campaign by reading partisan material, purchasing campaign goods, playing with political toys, and creating their own political material culture. The wide variety and availability of campaign material culture in the age of Jackson demonstrates how populist politics impacted the identity of American citizens. The people who purchased these items made a choice to include the campaign in their daily lives. Every one of these forms was available without political imagery. Jackson pin boxes, Henry Clay handkerchiefs, and Taylor parlor stoves were not the only options on the market. Tippecanoe champagne was one of 4 sparkling wines listed for sale at George Zanzinger's Pure Wines and Liquors store in Philadelphia, and Rough and Ready extract was sold alongside heliotrope, magnolia, lilac, and rose scents at Parker's Fancy and Perfumery store. Staffordshire ceramics crossed the Atlantic in hundreds of patterns, featuring flowers, exotic scenes, and architecture, in addition to the Columbian Star patterns supporting the log cabin campaign in 1840. Men looking for accessories and women seeking cloth for their sewing projects had unlimited choices. If they chose to purchase a clay pipe, a log cabin hat, a Harrison and Reform cotton, or a rough and ready chintz, they made a statement of political belief. By purchasing, making, using, wearing, sleeping, bathing, and playing with objects decorated with symbols of their candidate, Americans declared their identity in the partisan world. Historians who have studied political history in antebellum America, tracking the rise and fall of American democracy, mass political parties, the age of Jackson, and the American Whig Party, rarely, if ever, address the importance of material culture in the world of populist politics. The historiography of American political history has focused on the speeches, publications, and autobiographies of the politicians. While some historians have studied the demographics of the electorate, few have investigated how the populace interacted with the campaign. These authors have used campaign objects as illustrations of slogans and partisan fervor, but they have not looked further to see how political material culture carried the campaign into the daily lives of American people. Campaign objects are sensory proof of populist politics. Political images became part of the landscape, architecture, and soundscape of the public world across the nation. The campaign also assaulted the senses at home. One could feel the projecting portraits of the cool glass of campaign flasks, taste the sweetness of a campaign cake, hear the melodies of campaign songs, see the bright colors of the bold campaign scenes on bandboxes, and smell the scent of Harrison soap or Rough and Ready perfume. Campaign objects were both a cause and an effect of populist politics. Increased interest in national elections created the market for politically themed objects, which in turn escalated the excitement of the campaign. Hickory poles and log cabin meeting houses inspired by campaign symbols were erected in town squares and generated a sense of political community. Relatable and identifiable campaign slogans were applied to common domestic objects, which then introduced political discussion into new environments. Campaign objects transformed the slogans and images promoting a partisan message into markers of personal belief of the people who produced, purchased, and used them. When Frances Trollope, a visiting Englishwoman, described presidential politics in 1828, she claimed, "It engrosses every conversation. It irritates every temper. It substitutes party spirit for personal esteem, and, in fact, vitiates the whole system of society." Although Ms. Trollope had a very negative view of politics, her observation was essentially correct. Populist politics pervaded the social world in the second quarter of the 19th century. Campaign objects transformed businesses, bedrooms, and bathtubs into political sites. The campaign towered over town squares, rolled through the streets, and marked the buttoned and beribboned chests of men. These objects were methods of persuasion and physical markers of personal belief. They offered anyone a role in the political process by campaigning for a favored candidate in public and at home. Thank you very much.